when you stop and think, like brands have tried to do everything that they possibly could to avoid building a really strong first-party data foundation. So third-party cookies, third-party data, third-party tools. And, I think it was because like that was always the easier path. Building a first-party data foundation is hard, right? Like you have to stop what you're doing. You have to identify an owner, and I think that this is part of the crux of the issue inside most organizations. Like the whole chief data officer thing never took off the way that I think maybe we had anticipated.
I'm Eric Fulweiler, and this is Scratch, bringing you marketing lessons from the leading brands and brains rewriting the rulebook from scratch for the world of today.
Hey everybody, and welcome to a special edition of Scratch, hosted by me, Jenna Cummings, the co-founder over here at Rival. I'm super excited because today we're talking to Michael Katz. He is currently the CEO of mParticle, but is a pretty seasoned and experienced entrepreneur and a longtime leader within the ad tech space. Previously, he was the founder of InterClick, which sold to Yahoo in 2011 before he started mParticle. We're very excited to talk to him today, particularly because mParticle is helping a lot of brands, including some of our clients, focus on their first-party data, a particular passion of mine, given my strong opinions strongly held about garbage third-party data. But mParticle is one of the leading customer data platforms, helping the world's best brands unify their data across all of their consumer touchpoints and optimize their marketing outcomes. Very excited to talk to MK today. MK, welcome to Scratch. Lovely to have you here today, virtually. How you doing?
Great to be here. I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
I'm pretty good. We were just complaining behind the scenes. It's cold in London. We have skipped. We're done with the end of summer. I'm kind of okay with it, but
summer's over. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyways, MK, super glad to have you. Welcome to Scratch. It's your first time. I'm sure you're a long-time avid listener, so you might know the deal at this point in time. We like to start out with a couple icebreakers. The first one that we have for folks is, what is one challenger or rival brand that you're passionate about right now? And I'll steal the line from our UK listeners, from the good folks over at TopJaw. No self-noms. You can't use your own marketing, but otherwise, who are you interested in right now?
Damn. Now I got no material left. For a challenger brand that I like, I'm looking at my dog right now. Probably go with like one of the newer, healthier pet food brands, kind of taking on like the big kind of dog food industry. So something like Farmer's Dog or Ollie, one of those kind of brands.
Oh yeah, the ones that are like you wouldn't eat like processed food every day of your life. Those ones
Exactly,
tug at the heartstrings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like human. Yeah, their commercials are great.
Were they the ones that just put out it was the one with the ref who'd called like an NFL game and he was like getting trashed on for like making a terrible call, and he's just getting like wrecked, and then he comes home and then his dog like is the only one that loves him when he's had like a really terrible day. That one was really good. I thought I saw that one. I liked that one a lot.
That sounds like the story of my life.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, everybody else might be mad at you. The shareholders might be pissed, but your dog still loves you, man. Yeah.
Every single day, every minute of every day. Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Well, MK, like I said, before we get into like kind of the questions for today, do you want to give us and some of our listeners just an overview of what you do and kind of what mParticle does, so we have a little background in case, for folks that aren't familiar?
Sure. I will. Glad to talk about what mParticle does. As a startup CEO in a company that's been around 10, 11 years at this point, I'm not really allowed to do much anymore. Nobody wants me near anything. But let's focus on mParticle and kind of where we sit. So maybe just a bit of a history lesson to start. About 10, 11 years ago, when we started the company, we saw a need for a new, a more modern type of data management solution. What we saw was like the rise of the cloud and like the rise of mobile and the app stores were kind of like fundamentally reimagining what the consumer, like the digital consumer experience was. And so seemingly like overnight, you had a whole bunch of new platforms where there was unique and different types of data being created. You also had this rapidly growing, burgeoning ecosystem of like marketing tech and ad tech tools that were coming to market to help businesses kind of navigate some of those complexities. And then, somewhere in the middle, you had like all these disconnected views of the customer. And so mParticle launched with kind of a very clear vision, which was around solving integration challenges. Integration of various data sources, creating unified, integrated customer profiles, which serve as the kind of foundation for better segmentation and analytics, and then solving the downstream integration challenges with respect to connecting data to various like marketing and advertising endpoints. And so we felt like there was going to be a lot of room to run given the platform shift that was happening. Just because, look, in going from like 2013 to maybe 2017 or so, you just had this like explosion of marketing tech tools, right? And what that did was like it kind of created this like arms race for marketers to kind of load up on the newest, latest, biggest, best, fastest mousetrap or set of mousetraps, which then ended up putting pressure, like it intensified competitive pressures. So everybody's armed with the latest and greatest tools. You had this arms race, and now everybody's got all these weapons pointed at everybody. And so like from the top part of the funnel all the way to the bottom part of the funnel, everything just got more expensive ultimately. And that's what like the first generation of CDPs was designed to do, is like to simplify, to streamline, create operational efficiencies so you can navigate a lot of that complexity and you can kind of outpoint your competition. What tends to happen with most markets and industries and software is like eventually it gets commoditized. So we've seen this more so over the past 5 years with the rise of the cloud data warehouse. And look, I think in marketing tech, every vendor offers integration. I think like software, it's fairly commonplace to see integrations into other systems. Like you can't have your data trapped. So like the integration thing has been solved, broadly speaking. Where we've been focused is shifting the conversation that we're having both with potential customers and existing customers from a point around like access, making access much easier, to one around execution. And what that has required, where we've invested heavily over the past couple of years, is in our intelligence layer, right? So like what every marketer wants to do is like they want to build audiences and they want to connect them to the different endpoints and run campaigns successfully. There's a whole bunch of steps that have to happen in between to make sure that you're doing that on top of like clean and consented data, that you're doing it as cost effectively as possible, just like building a bunch of audience segments and throwing them out to the various marketing tools and running campaigns. Like that's, you can do that, but that's super expensive. So like, how do you help with the process of audience discovery? And then there's multiple ways to build audiences. What, like, are you creating these like journeys or sequences? Are you creating just like your kind of standard Boolean based audiences, or do you want to visualize and contextualize everything first and then being able to do things in a bit of like a drag and drop basis? So, there's a number of steps that have to happen before like the audience gets created. And then once it gets created, connecting it to the different systems is no longer enough, because you have all the signal loss from like third-party cookie deprecation, the restrictions on mobile ad IDs introduced with iOS 15.4. And so addressability is a really big problem for a lot of marketers. So how can you augment customer profiles with additional signals, whether it's first party or third party, to be able to improve addressability? Because if you're building all these audiences, you want to be able to actually connect with them in places like Meta and Google and Braze or wherever. Because if you can't reach them, then it's like, tree falls in the forest, nobody hears it, does it really fall kind of thing. So that's what we do. We help our customers better execute along the entire audience activation lifecycle.
Yeah, and I'm so interested in your perspective on this again, not only just because of what you guys do at mParticle and that POV, but also that you've seen a pretty long history of like this evolution. And I know in your previous role, you were previously the founder of InterClick that you sold to Yahoo, that tackled a reasonably similar problem exactly as you've articulated of, okay, we need to find our audiences and activate against them and look at certain places and use that data, but have kind of seen that go from, I think, a heavily or predominantly, third party oriented thing, but now, as you've said, like, hey, there's a lot of challenges to that where a lot of the shift in attention for marketers and organizations is going much more towards, again, properly consented data, appropriately governed, that's forcing folks to look at what are the data points that I can understand about my audience through my interactions with them. And then again, how do I use that? How do I overcome that kind of signal loss, to activate properly against that? Which I think is really fascinating how that's kind of evolved over the last, 10, 20 years. For the folks that you guys are talking to, how how cognizant or conscious are people of that shift? Are marketers coming to you guys of like explicitly with the, oh my gosh, like we like iOS has absolutely screwed us. Like we know that we need to talk about like first party. Is this like more about like that they just view this as the next evolution? What have kind of CMOs been talking to you guys about how they understand this problem for their brands and audiences?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an existential matter for some. If you look at businesses that are historically only ad supported, like you are seeing this like business model transformation being forced that was catalyzed by the changes to like the privacy landscape, which then gave companies like Apple and Google air cover to kind of change rules around identity, accessibility, and like what you could do. It changed the rules of engagement ultimately, right? And so we're seeing this big shift. A lot of legacy brands who had an ad-supported business model are now creating registration paths, and they're creating paywalls, and they're trying to drive ad revenue and replace it with subscriber revenue, or at least like at the very least like complement it with subscriber revenue. Because I think like one of the things that I've observed running InterClick into mParticle over the course of the past 2 decades is like when you stop and think, like brands have tried to do everything that they possibly could to avoid building a really strong first-party data foundation. So third-party cookies, third-party data, third-party tools. And, I think it was because like that was always the easier path. Building a first-party data foundation is hard, right? Like you have to stop what you're doing. You have to identify an owner, and I think that this is part of the crux of the issue inside most organizations. Like the whole chief data officer thing never took off the way that I think maybe we had anticipated. Like, yeah, there are chief data officers, and they are really important in certain organizations, but I would argue that there's not enough of them to own the data strategy, right? Because without somebody owning it, it kind of becomes this thing where it's like it's everybody else's problem, or you have this like distributed ownership model, and when ownership is distributed, there is no ownership, right? And so nobody really knows who's moving the Ouija board. So getting back to like the kind of main point, it's like building that first party data foundation is this like critical step that like people weren't sure like who owned and who should champion it and take it forward. But like now there's no other choice. Like you have to do that, because I think one of the second order effects of like all those changes around identity was that the market opportunity for like cheap customer acquisition, mainly on like places like Facebook and the other walled garden social platforms, we saw that go away, right? So the strategy for a long period of time was like go out and buy a bunch of users as cheaply as possible, and like whatever happens happens. Like the funnel was a bit of a leaky bucket, and you'd retain some, you'd lose some, and that was that. As long as you could like fill the bucket faster than the water would kind of leave the bucket, then you were fine. But when that went away, like the math changed, right? And you had to figure out like, okay, if it's going to be a lot harder to bring new people into the funnel to create new customers, how do I keep them around longer? Like, how do I deliver value to them so that they want to be around longer? That you turn a customer into a loyal customer, into eventually a brand advocate. And there's no, like, yes, I think that requires beautiful design and a very kind of creative mindset. But what underpins all of it is first party data. So like the conversations we're having with, it's not even just CMOs. I mean, it's executives really across the board. It's like you have to, like, this is the not only the future, this is the present.
Hey everyone, just another quick interruption. If you're listening to this podcast and you're not already part of our AMP community on WhatsApp, would love for you to get involved. So AMP is a community that we started at the beginning of the business, really, just to kind of bring together some of the interesting people that we were talking to, the marketers that we were coming across, many of whom have been on this show as well. And so now AMP is about 300 senior marketers from around the world, from various categories, different stages, challengers, incumbents. And it's really a place where people can share questions, can share resources, can make new connections, can use folks as sounding boards. And for those that are in it, you know it is a very vibrant community. It's really taken on a life of its own, which is amazing. So if you're listening to this and you want to get involved, please go to our website, weareRival.com. There you can find the application form or reach out to me or someone at Rival directly. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of folks, have kind of woken up exactly with a hangover from the era of cheap acquisition, like in Google and Meta, right? When it was like when inventory was dirt cheap, and that Facebook could track everybody around the internet and do that. Because so many brands, in my view, exactly as you said, just ceded their entire data strategies and delegated it entirely to Meta and Google to find and identify those customers for them. And then, this was so shocking to me that people were surprised when this happened, because I thought that like Vice and like BuzzFeed and a lot of like those types of publishers for a long time that had relied on like Meta or Google for their traffic and then got completely cut off, like when Facebook introduced like the in-app like browsing experience and all those other types of things, that was such a warning for, you cannot rely on these types of platforms or an intermediary to be, if they own the traffic and they and you essentially are paying a toll for them, then you're at their mercy if and when they decide to turn that tap off. And like I said, I feel like, so many people have woken up and they're like, oh my gosh, we have no idea who these people are. We relied on lookalike audiences or near identifiers like from Google for so long to properly find and understand these people. And that now, there's like a lot of like scrambling for this kind of thing. And exactly as you said, I think people were, understandably, turned off by a lot of the complexity within like MarTech and ad tech before they needed to like stand up and like take responsibility for that. But to your point, it's the present now. We are, what number revision are we on? Like Google is getting rid of cookies, is not getting rid of, I've lost track. Do you know what number we're on?
The latest stance, which I think is recent as of maybe like 2 months ago, was
I
that
can't keep up anymore.
I know, because it's this on again, off again thing. They're not they basically said for the time being they're not deprecating third party cookies, which is a total about face, and I think like there's like a lot of conspiracy theories like were they ever going to do it, or they just
Oh, I think they never were. I think they never were. I think that they're just, this is like some weird puppet master. That's my tinfoil hat. Like, no,
yeah,
they
like
weren't
maybe
gonna.
like
Yeah,
messing with the regulators.
yeah,
But look, I think you bring up a really important point that kind of goes even beyond the world of advertising and marketing, which is like, look, if you're creating a business and your business model is dependent on a single kind of like platform decision, you have real meaningful platform risk, right? Like Facebook changed the algorithm, BuzzFeed imploded, right? How many businesses were built on the search algorithm that Google had for a number of years? What was it, like Demand Media, that was like creating all those kind of content farms,
yeah.
and like it was all just like kind of garbage content, and they were like arbitraging this thing, and when Google made an adjustment, their business imploded, right? So as fast as these kind of businesses come up, they can also go, like there's gravity to all of it.
Hey everyone, just want to take a quick minute because we've actually heard from many of you that you want to get a better understanding of what it is that we actually do here at Rival. You know us for the content, obviously you're listening to Scratch right now, but everything else that we put out, the events, the community, but actually our core business, just so you know, we are a marketing consultancy for challenger brands. We partner with brands big and small to gain category share with a challenger approach. We develop and execute strategies and campaigns across 4 main areas of the marketing function: brand strategy, creative and production, paid media planning and buying, and customer data and MarTech. And then, of course, as you know, the mission that's wrapped around Rival is to understand and share our learnings about what drives the growth of successful challenger brands. That's it. Sorry for the interruption. I'll let you get back to the show.
Yeah. So, like I said, great to see, like I said, that folks are starting to take ownership, like more of these types of things. And yeah, I feel like that was like the day that I knew that we were in a recession was when, oh, shoot, I forget, like, I think it was like BCG said, like, it's no longer about the cheapest cost per acquisition you can make. You actually need to start caring about marginal contribution of your customers. And I was like, oh no, the free money is gone. This era is over. It's bad. We're back to a
Sure.
bear market. It's
Yeah.
done. Yeah. And like I said, like as you said, now people are starting to kind of wake up to this reality, and I think kind of what the next like 10 years is going to be like. And so, taking ownership of that. But as you've said, okay, great. So we're doing that, and now, like I say, connections and like figuring out how to, where to put these types of things is a little bit like table stakes, kind of now. So one of the things you said in our prep for this, and I'm probably going to steal your thunder on this one, is that hey, like it's no longer an access problem; it's now an intelligence problem. Like I said, for this type of data. So again, I'll give you a chance to kind of talk a little bit about like how has mParticle ingrained that like kind of in the product philosophy, and really what does that mean on the like it's not about connection, it's now about intelligence kind of deal.
Yeah. So the shift has gone from integration to intelligence. It's the same shift from like access to execution. It's no longer a challenge to move data between different systems and to kind of mash it all together and to do some of the more basic things. It's how do you do those things as efficiently and as effectively as possible, and then how do you scale that success, right? And so from a mParticle centric lens, right, like data comes in to the platform, right? Like, and we make it really easy. Companies can be up and running with us in a day if they want, right? Especially if they have a pretty good hold of their data assets and they're sitting within like a cloud data warehouse. Like we make it really, really easy to tap into that. But then what happens next? The problem that a lot of CDPs have is like they have this like it's like this empty vessel problem, or this like blank canvas problem, where it's like if you know exactly what audiences you want to build and what campaigns you want to run against those audiences, and you know exactly what your desired marketing tech stack looks like and how you think about achieving your goals, like if all of that stuff is figured out, use whatever kind of like probably off the
I've
shelf
never,
tools.
I've
Yeah.
never seen an organization. Yeah, wow, that exists in fairy tale land. But yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. If those things are true, yeah.
Total. Yeah. I mean, it's a bit of like an empty offer on my part. It's like nobody has all those things figured out. To your point. So how do you help them figure it out? Right. Like you have to instantiate intelligence to be able to surface these insights. Right. Because I think two things that we hear a lot is that we feel overwhelmed by the data. So it's no longer like, oh, I don't really have data. It's like I'm drowning in data, but I don't know how to make heads or tails of it. Like I don't know how to separate signal from noise. So one of the first things that you really have to be able to do is to contextualize the data. You have to, like for us, we try to help our customers better understand their customers, right? Through that audience discovery process. Like where are there pockets of opportunity given whatever goals you're looking to define? If they're more upper funnel or lower funnel, we try to make it really simple because there's a series of kind of downstream implications if you're able to do that right. So that's one aspect of it. It's like the more kind of descriptive analytics type aspect of it. But then you get into this, more like the forward-looking predictive element of our intelligence layer. And what we're doing is we're making it really easy for marketers to go out and build hypotheses or to create predictions and to incorporate those into the set of existing customer profiles that they have. So we're creating data about the data, right? Based on all the, for example, based on all the different data points that we see, what are these users' propensity to churn, to stick around, to be upsold, to whatever, right? And that's just like one example. We have a whole bunch of different pipelines. But in doing so, as you start to augment the customer profile with these predictive insights and predictive attributes, you end up making the downstream tools more powerful as well. Because now you can do things that you couldn't do before. You can run a retention marketing campaign in Braze and Facebook and wherever else, targeting people who are likely to churn. Right, give them an offer, and you can create an audience journey around it. I think one of the things that we're starting to think about is like how do you automate all of it, right? How do you automate the entire audience activation lifecycle from like accessibility and validation to discovery all the way through like execution and measurement? And how do you create that like automated feedback loop so that it's like, the easy button never really exists, but that's always kind of the goal is to move
Well,
the
it's
power.
AI.
Yeah.
The easy button is AI now. Yeah.
Yes.
AI does it. Yeah.
It's AI with a fair bit of transparency into like how the AI is working, why either users are being included or not included. Because I think a lot of the problem that people have with most AI is like it's total black boxy, right? And with that, AI doesn't just like, it doesn't always return like the best results. Like for generative AI, like the kind of you have like hallucinations, right? In more like analytical AI, you have values that have really low confidence intervals. So exposing the confidence interval, I think, is also really important. So there's like a couple of like fairly nuanced things to actually do it right for marketers, but like blindly trusting AI, like I don't know, back in the day in ad tech, it was the same thing with like algorithms. It was like, oh, how does it work? It's the algorithm.
It's
Like
the
we have a better
algorithm. Yeah, the
algorithm.
algorithm does it. Yeah.
Yeah, like
I used to I tell people I'm like sometimes I feel like a witch, right? When I'm like, I don't know why the ad did well. The algorithm like didn't like it. And it's like you're explaining like the vagaries of some supernatural force. So like, I don't know, like let's go sacrifice a bunny rabbit and see what happens to our
totally.
CTR. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But no, I think that, like I said, to your point about like explainability is so good because, and like, yeah, I say this like all the time of like a lot of those segmentation pieces, and again, like understanding a lot of those questions, like it again, I've been doing this, not quite 20 years, but like long enough to see the institutional challenges that people have with like, yes, so much data science and machine learning, or if you want to call it AI, like whatever else, is hugely valuable for folks. But like, if you need to have a whole separate, like, major team of like data scientists to build these models for you, kind of like bespoke or like whatever else, for all these big problems, that's a massive institutional lift. But also, then like, there's the standard impracticalities of like working with other teams and aligning on like what are the questions that I'm actually trying to answer that always get lost between like business teams and analytics, like kinds of folks. And I think turning that into a place where, again, like the actual practitioners who are marketers who need data and can ask questions or understand things in plain natural language, and again have some explainability as to how those models work, is really really huge. Do you kind of think, like I say, like I know, like I said, I just ragged on like AI like a little bit, but obviously that is to some extent where the next 10 years like is going to be. But is that kind of where you guys are like putting your eggs in that basket of like, yes, like AI is going to be a thing, but we need to put it in the hands of kind of practitioners for these types of things to make it, practical, rather than you need a team of, 20, 30 data scientists to go do these types of things for you on a regular basis?
Um, yeah, I look at it. So the short answer is like yes, but I look at it a little bit differently. Like our job is not to compete with or replace the work that like the data science teams are doing. Usually, that's like some of the most important, valuable work that happens within an organization. Our job is to take a bunch of the lower priority ad hoc models that would otherwise need to get built, which end up kind of taking away from the more important work and serving as like a first line of defense, right? Like what we find oftentimes is like, I mean, what we find every time is that like the models that are built internally at all of our existing customers, they're way better than what we could do because we don't have all their data. We have a subset, a meaningful subset, but not all of it. And these models have been fine tuned over the course of time to meet like their very specific needs. Like they are the Ferrari. What we bring is like the BMW that is much better for a long road trip, that is still very nice and is accurate and efficient and very empowering for the marketer, but has like a much better kind of cost to value profile, right? So making sure that like we're creating that distinction that like we are not here to compete with or replace your data science team. We're here to augment them to be serve as a kind of front line of defense, and then we execute these models. And what we're seeing a lot of customers do is take the output of these models and integrate them as features onto their models. So they're using the output to continue to refine and improve their models. So it's more symbiotic than it is competitive, but like I do think the way that I think version 1.0 of the CDP was about democratizing access to hopefully clean, consented customer data. We want to do the same thing with machine learning. We want to put powerful and transparent AI tools in the hands of pretty much everybody throughout the organization. It shouldn't just be in the hands of those, probably overworked, underappreciated data scientists. And so, yeah, I mean, like, just stepping back though, I think the bigger point is like there's a lot of companies out there that are focused on what I think I would refer to as like the smaller problems within the space. We do like, and that's why like we're not for everybody. We try to work with large enterprise leading multi-channel consumer brands that have some fairly sophisticated needs, because we tend to focus on like the bigger problems, right? And we can get into what they are, but there's a big distinction that has to be made, like, because there's so much noise in and around the space. There's like this never ending kind of like LinkedIn argument about a whole bunch of different things, and
I've never seen any of that content. Actually,
I know,
I
right?
don't think I've seen anything like that. No, it doesn't
Allegedly,
sound like the LinkedIn I know.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, I was saying, like I say, so delivering on the actual like promise of like automation, which is to reduce like the burdensome like overhead of labor to actually free humans up to do the interesting stuff that is again like more valuable that machines actually do struggle to do. So that's great. Well, great. Like I said, this has been super helpful. Any, I guess, like kind of the last like overall question. Big one. How, in your view, like I said, should CMOs like look to be approaching, like I said, like the next like decade of ad tech and like customer data? Any kind of like last words or thoughts on that topic? And then we've got some fun lightning round questions.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you like what we're seeing in market, and I think we've seen this for a while, because this is not necessarily like a new narrative, but you do have this tension between marketing and IT departments, right? Especially for solutions like a CDP, where the marketer wants to help achieve business goals and be the hero, right? Like reimagine the status quo. But then you have on the other side, you have data and IT teams who are, rightfully so, trying to conform everything to like their reference architecture. And there can be a fair bit of tension, because there's always going to be trade-offs. Like on one end, you have like complete rigidity, where it's like we cannot deviate from this this reference architecture, and that's fine, although it's kind of limiting. And I would probably characterize that as like, okay, well, we're probably solving for a smaller problem there. On the other side, you have like total flexibility, but your data architecture is a total mess. So how do you navigate that? Because I think like that can create a bunch of big problems, right? And so I think like where we tend to see the world of like customer data solutions going, it's like, remember the old the kids cereal brand Kix? It's like kid tested, mother approved.
Mother
right?
approved. Yeah, absolutely. Love Kix. Yeah.
It's like marketer tested, IT department approved, right? So it's that collaboration. Like we championed this idea of data as a team sport for a number of years, and it's to say that like nobody can be successful on their own. You have data producers and you have data consumers, and they do need to come together for the benefit of the organization. And sometimes there are a different set of priorities or needs, but the producers aren't effective without the consumers getting what they want. The consumers can't do what they need without balancing the needs of the producers. So kind of a kumbaya moment, but like, bring everybody together.
It's the same principle of why you should always be nice to like the back office, like operations people, of like, if they sign the paychecks and pay the invoices, or if they're the IT people and they hook up the pipes, you better be nice to them. They control your destiny a lot more than you appreciate at any given time. So
should be nice
agreed.
to everybody. You
should be nice to everybody, of course, but like in particular, like you maybe have like a self-interest in like being nicer to people that you don't always. Yeah. Same as like be nice to wait staff, just because you should, but also because you don't want them to spit in your food. Same principle.
For sure.
Yeah. All right, MK, thank you so much. So just a couple like kind of like last lightning round questions for a couple fun, easy ones for you. First of all, first marketing job you ever had?
I think it was when I started Interclick. I wasn't in marketing before that. I was doing management consulting.
Wow. Oh, fine. Yeah, fair. Okay, yeah, fair enough. The pipeline from management consulting into Martech. Yeah, that's an understood,
Yeah.
well trodden path there. And then actually, then let's say a good one. Maybe I'm sure you've gotten a couple like in this time. Best piece of career advice you ever received?
Uh, I've gotten a fair bit of career advice. Let me think about maybe the best advice. Um, well, maybe I'll start with like the worst advice, which is like just yeah, like
Probably more
just
useful,
pursue
actually.
the
Yeah,
things
definitely
that
start there. Yeah.
make you happy. Like that usually doesn't end well. I think you need to find happiness in the things that you do, but like unless you're going to work at like a charitable organization, like if you're working for a for-profit commercially centric business, like pursue something where you're going to have the opportunity to become, economically successful so that you can free up your ability to then go and pursue the things that you want to do and the things that make you happy.
Yeah, I think it's like Scott Galloway who says that like the only people that tell you to follow your
Yeah.
passions are like billionaires who made their money
Yeah.
in iron ore smelting, right? Of like you think that they followed their passion. No, like follow your talent, get paid for your talent. I do, yeah, that's a good one. Cool. And then just our last one for today. And again, thank you so much for being on. Anything you want folks to do differently after
Um,
hearing this episode?
Maybe reach out to mParticle. Yeah, look, yeah.
No self noms. No top jaw rules. No
I
self
couldn't help
noms.
myself. Um, I think the big thing that we try to impress upon potential customers is getting them to kind of reorient the conversation through the lens of like, hey, am I fixated on these like small problems, which are usually like nice to haves, or am I focused on the big problems, which are like the must do things? And I would just recommend that like there's always kind of that strong delineation and some sort of cutting line that ultimately divides the two.
Always solid advice. Do the
Yeah.
important and urgent things, and then the other things, yeah, fall below that line. Wonderful. Well, MK, thank you so much for being on the show. Hope it's been a lovely experience. And like I say, now and we can say, if anybody needs any help on the customer data side, mParticle, give them a look up. They know what they're doing. And I think that brings us to the end of things.
Thanks.
Thank you guys so much. Cheers.
Scratch is a production of Rival. We are a marketing consultancy on a mission to understand what drives the growth of successful challenger brands. Find us online at wearerival.com, LinkedIn, or visit our content hub to listen, read, and watch more of our content and research. Or just drop us a note at media@wearerival.com. We'd love to hear from you.